Hold up.
Hey guys, it is Tristan with Nerdouts Newsstand. It is that time of year again where we start winding everything down and looking at the best of. I have done a best of comics. I have done the best publishers. And now we're going to talk about the best writers. Now this one was actually extremely tricky for me. I kept adding more and more. And it started out as a top 5 and now it's a top 10. With a couple ties in there. Yeah, this one was really hard for me to narrow down because there is so many phenomenal writers right now in comics that looking at the best of was like, whoa, how do I even begin to pick? And it was hard. So we're going to get to it. But I am going to go through this list rather quickly because there is 10. And if you enjoy comic books, comic book type content, pop culture, movies, and more, make sure you are subscribed. Hit like, let me know in the comments who your favorite writer was this year. If you have a couple, I understand. I'm right there with you. It is hard to narrow it down. So let's start with 10. It is probably pretty high on the list, I would say, for myself. And that is because I am not a huge Marvel person, but I have number 10 as Chip Zdarsky. His stuff he did at DC was great. I loved Justice League Last Ride, and I am just beginning to get into his Daredevil, so he kind of creeped up on the list, but he is absolutely phenomenal. I believe he did a Silver Coin. We have seen him do a issue of Crossover. I love Chip Zdarsky. I love his old stuff, his old Sex Criminals and stuff, but we're talking about current year, and he made my number 10. So, for number 9, I have Stephanie Phillips. Now, most of you probably know I am a huge Stephanie Phillips fan. I am the original stan for Stephanie Phillips, and I will take that title to the grave. Now, I absolutely love her Harley Quinn. I've talked about the art related to that plenty of times. I'm not going to go into it. Her stuff she's doing with the Arkham Tower Rising is phenomenal. But what is so great is her indie work. If you have not read Nuclear Family, you are 100% missing out on a phenomenal story. It is probably should have been on my top 10 books of the year, but honestly, I forgot about it. Not gonna lie, I forgot. And it's worth reading if you haven't yet. So for number 8, I have Mathew Rosenberg. I actually haven't been super familiar with him until maybe the past 2 years or so, but I love the work he did originally when he came kind of, trotting over to DC. He did the urban legend stuff with Grifter. Grifter is one of my favorite characters. He did the Future State Grifter. Loved that. And he did a great job with it. And then fast forward a little bit, Task Force Z, and we have a great story going on there. Then he has his own story, right? What's the Furthest Place from Here? I really enjoy What's the Furthest Place from Here. We're only 2 in. He did a Silver Coin. That was awesome. Silver Coin, if you haven't read it, was another one of those I forgot about that I should have had on my list. But it is a phenomenal series. It is continuing now. But there's a lot of really... Oh, he's also doing DC vs. Vampires. See what I mean? I forget about these things. I need to be more prepared and more organized. But yeah, that's just not this channel. Ever. So for number 7, I have a tie, and that is between MARIKO Tamaki and James Tynion. Now, the reason it is a tie is because I would say, and I have said all along, MARIKO Tamaki's Detective Comics is far superior to James Tynion's Batman. But the work that James Tynion did outside of the big 2 was so good, he probably should have been lower on this list. If you haven't read Something is Killing the Children, why not? If you haven't read my number 1 pick of the entire year, which was The Department of Truth, it is absolutely phenomenal. But because of the stuff he did on Batman, he ended up being a little bit lower on the list. So for number 6, I have Tom Taylor. I absolutely love Tom Taylor. I think he does a great Nightwing. He really brought that heart back to Nightwing, and it's kind of a little bit of a love letter to the people that love him and Babs, and we've got Bitewing. Come on. Bitewing is the cutest new character at DC Comics this year. But not only that, he's doing a great job with Dark Knights of Steel. We've seen Deceased. We've seen so much good work. Son of Kal-El, not my favorite title, but it's still good. So Taylor definitely deserves all the credit he is getting. He's got an exclusive now at DC, which is totally awesome. Number 5, I have Jeremy Adams. And Jeremy Adams' passion alone makes him deserve it of this list. But the work that he has put in to Wally West Flash as a fan of Barry Allen Flash more is deserving of so much more work. And it actually made me like Wally West a lot more. The way he has taken this character from somebody who killed people in Heroes in Crisis and then retconned it and then really was disliked by Dan DiDio and made it so wholesome and so sweet, brought new elements in with Dr. Fate. This man deserves so much more work. And I will go to my grave saying, listen, DC, give him more work. He deserves it. So for number 4, I have Donny Cates. Now, Donny Cates does a lot of great work. His Baby Teeth is phenomenal. His stuff at Marvel is good. But the reason I really put him so high on this list was because of Crossover. Crossover is another phenomenal series that needs to be checked out more often. And it does a really good job of taking a brand new concept of superheroes and putting him into the real world and adding elements from Image Comics, right? We saw Savage Dragon. We saw different stuff from Hitman and other things in God Country. So I absolutely love the way that Donny Cates really brings every single time he gets on the page. So for number 3, I have another tie. Oh, these two would have been probably number 1 in the last couple years, but SNYDER and Johns. Now, the work that SNYDER has done for Comixology for Amazon is phenomenal. If you haven't read We Are Demons or Clear, you are really missing out. But my favorite title for him personally this year is Noctera. I absolutely love this story. I love Val. I love Emery. I love every single character. Bailey. I love the way that he takes a post-apocalyptic world and does it totally different than anything we've seen before. Scott Snyder's work on Batman was phenomenal. It was very like male Batman, right? It really appealed to a male audience. This appeals to everyone, and I really, really like that. So for Johns, of course, Jeff Johns is going to make my top list. He's one of my favorite writers probably ever. Probably number 1 or 2 on that list if I were to have to make it. But Jeff Johns' work this year hasn't been as much. His work on 3 Jokers last year wasn't my favorite run, but his work on Geiger put him on this list. This, again, is one of my favorite stories of the year. I really enjoyed Geiger. Everything that Johns puts in his work into, he really delivers. And he's a classic. He can take any character and make them phenomenal. So I'm hoping DC brings him back a little bit more. I would really like to see that. But I do think with the Mad Cave stuff he is doing over at Image, it's very unlikely. So we're getting down there. And actually, number 2 is, again, he does work at DC. Jeff Lemire. I can't say anything bad about anything he's really ever written, even going back to his Moon Knight stuff, right? But this year alone, he has put out so many good titles that he is one of those that I see and I automatically buy because I know it's going to be good. His work on Robin and Batman is phenomenal at the big 2. But again, his work on the indies are what absolutely makes me love this man as a writer. His work on Primordial, his work on May's book. And I thought May's book was supposed to come out this week. I was kind of disappointed the end of that, but I absolutely love everything he puts out. He did some stuff with Puzzle Box and some other stuff, but Jeff Lemire is an instant buy anymore. And that is not even, I can go back and talk about Sweet Tooth for hours. This year alone, Jeff Lemire has made it so he is one of the top writers. And I'm so impressed by everything that he puts out. So number 1, take a guess. What do you think it's going to be? Yeah, it's got to be Ram V. There is nobody out there right now that can tell a story like Ram V. Now, Jeff Lemire comes close, but Ram has his own style of a little bit longer form storytelling. He takes his time to tell you his story because he wants every part of it to matter. His Swamp Thing, this 10 issues we have gotten so far, is so reminiscent of Alan Moore, almost exceeding that original work. And that is saying a lot because I love Alan Moore's work on Swamp Thing. But he has made Levi Kamai, this avatar of the green, that is just as important as, of course, Alec in his side work. Oh my God. And you can look at the many deaths of Layla Starr, Radio Apocalypse. They are all so good. And they are all full of something that not always we see. And that is really heart. Like, Jeff Lemire makes some great stories, and maybe May's book will end up that way. But every single time I read or finish a story by Ram V, it hits you in the feels. And I've talked on plenty of times about how Radio Apocalypse, that's the hardest I've ever cried at a comic book. And I know I cry a lot, but it hit you at the point where it was like, geez, oh Pete, like, I shouldn't be this upset. It's just a comic book. I am this upset. Ram V, his Catwoman, he made Catwoman so important. He gave us Father Valley, which is probably one of my favorite villains for Catwoman specifically. So Ram V absolutely deserves all the credit he is getting. I bought Venom specifically because he was on it. I'm not a huge Venom person. I bought it because he was on it. And now I really am enjoying I think 3 issues we've got so far. Ram V deserves more work. I don't know if he can handle it. He just had a new baby, but he deserves all the credit that he's been getting. He really is a phenomenal writer in every sense of the word. So let me know, of course, who your top 10 or who your top 5 or who your favorite writer is this year. Or if you think all of mine on my list are terrible. I don't care. I want to know. Let me know in the comments below. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
I'm more than just a picture. I'm a